Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
Hello and welcome back again, Talking Books and Writing and Stuff. I'm DR, and with us today we have, from the West Coast, the Vancouver area, Chelene Knight. Chelene was born in Vancouver, BC, graduated from the Writers Studio at Simon Fraser University up there on the hill in Burnaby, and has been interested in writing at a young age, as I'm sure most people who are writers are. But Chelene, hello, and how have you survived the lockdown over the past few years?
Yes, I'm so happy to be speaking with you. Interesting enough, I didn't struggle too much with the lockdown, actually. I think as an introverted human, I kind of enjoyed just isolating and spending time with myself, to be honest. And you know what? I got a lot of writing done.
Well, I got a lot of TV watching and no writing done, so we're at the opposite ends of the spectrum. We're here to talk about Junie by Chelene Knight, but before we do that, it says, of course, lots of writers interested in writing at a young age. Do you have any favorite books, authors that you sort of were attracted to back in the early days?
Yeah, in the early days, I was reading everything I could in the school library. I really enjoyed, those kind of silly books like the Babysitter's Club and the Nancy Drew books and all of those things. But as a young girl, probably around 11 or 12, I actually read a lot of Stephen King. And, any books that I could find in, the mass market discount bin, that's kind of where I was. So I'd pick up whatever books happened to be in there. So I read a lot of, thrillers and crime books, believe it or not. But yeah, reading was a really important part of my young life.
And writing, when did you, I guess some people don't like this question. I've read something that people get bored with it, but when did you sort of find out you had a talent for putting a word together with another word that made sense?
I mean, I like this question. I don't know why people wouldn't like it. But for me, I think it definitely came to light when a teacher of mine kind of shoved me in front of the class and said, you know what, Chelene, this short story is fantastic, and I want you to read it in front of the class. And that was the most terrifying thing I think I've ever done. But to have someone, see the gold in my work so early, I think was really, really important and really incredible for a young person to hear, and to have someone kind of say, hey, you've got something here. And so since then, I've always been interested in writing and did it a lot in secret. I didn't show people my writing at all until I, was an adult. But it was so great to have that hidden world and be able to create space for myself.
I guess there's lots of teachers out there who don't get recognition, but they do help people, youngsters, spur on their own skills and talents, whether it be in art, writing, business, sports. Lots of teachers seem to be just that one person that a lot of us need to get us over the edge and really say, hey, I guess I can do that. So obviously you found that to be true.
Yeah. Definitely.
So when you're growing up, people would say, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? In my case, I haven't yet, so we'll worry about that in a later date. But what kind of answers did you give people?
Yeah, I don't think I ever said I wanted to be a writer, and I think that's likely because I didn't really see it as a career. I thought it was something people only did in the movies. This is not a real thing. People don't write and make a living. What is that? So I often told people that I wanted to be a chef. I wanted to cook things, and I think it's kind of related to writing in a way where you're taking these materials or these ingredients and you're building something from it. And fun fact, I actually went to culinary school before I went to the SFU writing program. So interesting stuff. Yep. How we find space in the world.
I always wanted to be a newspaper reporter, but then I got waylaid by radio, so there you go.
Huh.
So the book is Junie. It's out right now, and it's based. It's okay. Here, I'll just read what the news release says. Bracing intimate, Junie explores what it means to be young, black, and gifted in 1930s Vancouver through the thriving electric community known as Hogans Alley. Well, I've never heard of Hogans Alley, and I spent years in Vancouver in the 70s and 80s. So why is that? What the heck happened, and where is Hogans Alley, to be precise?
Yes, great question. And I think this is what sparked the interest in writing this book and setting it in Hogans Alley, is that so many people grew up in Vancouver and had no idea that this place existed. And I was one of those people. I didn't learn about Hogans Alley as this vibrant black and immigrant community until one of my previous mentors, Wade Compton, he did a talk on Hogans Alley. And I thought, well, where is this place? I've not seen this. And this was a neighborhood that I depict in my book, and I started in the 1930s. And when the Georgia viaducts were put in, and I want to say 1969, 1970-ish, it was put right through the neighborhood itself. And so it displaced all of the people living there, and folks were spread out. But that neighborhood was a thriving spot for, restaurants, bars, jazz music. It was the hub of, black and immigrant life. And so I thought, you know what, I'd love to somehow pay tribute to this place without trying to rebuild it, but trying to create this thread of reimagining this place. That's what I wanted to build, and that's the thread that I wanted to weave through my project. But you're not the only one. There's so many folks who just have never heard of this place.
Well, my dad grew up in East Van and West Burnaby, sort of in the 30s. I don't know if he ever mentioned it to me. I know he didn't. I know he had lots of Japanese-type friends who all of a sudden disappeared in the start of the Second World War that he never saw again, which is a sad chapter in our so-called tolerant society. But we won't get into that because we all know that's not true at all, is it? So Junie is the title of the book. She's the main character. She's a creative, observant child, it says, who moves to the alley with her mother, Maddie. So your book is about Maddie, Junie, then there's her friend Estelle, who wore bright red shoes to school the first time that Junie saw her, I think. So it's a memoir, I guess, or a historical book about an area and an era. Also mother-daughter relationships. That seems to be the big theme behind the book. Am I right there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. And so it's not a memoir at all. It's a novel. But I think, sometimes we put pieces of ourselves in books, and sometimes that kind of comes across. But definitely everything in the book itself is fictional. But, I wanted to create a dream for this displaced community in Vancouver's East End. And I thought, originally I wanted to rebuild an erased history. But as I started to write and as the story grew, I realized that this was a story about a girl searching for home and a sense of true belonging. So a girl, wanting to discover the true essence of herself and the true essence of love. And so she had to start with herself and with her community. So yeah, it definitely kind of festered and boiled into this complex mother-daughter relationship. But what's unique about the book itself, and what I hope folks will pick up on, is the layer of introversion that Junie displays throughout the book. So at the end of each chapter, for most chapters anyway, you'll see these first-person present tense vignettes in Junie's voice. And this is because, she thinks deeply about the way she moves in the world, and I wanted that to come across to the reader. And sometimes she doesn't process things in the moment. She has to process these happenings later on. Right. And so the structure of the book kind of mirrors that.
I kind of misspoke when I said memoir. It's like the people in the book are remembering what was going on as they tell the story. So I guess that's kind of what happened there. I got myself out of that one easy, didn't I? Chelene Knight is here. We're talking about the book Junie, plus other things in her what do they call it? CV. So other books have been out by you. You've also had one about the Dear Current Occupant. So actually you lived in 20 different homes growing up?
Yeah, so Dear Current Occupant was definitely a hybrid memoir. So that was me kind of tracing back all of these different houses that I lived in, and more to just kind of, excavate the hidden memories, and to, again, write to these people who I didn't even know, who were living in these homes years later, and just kind of create this, I guess, indirect relationship with all these people. Because when you think about a place, it holds so much memory, whether we see it, feel it, or look for it. And so I thought it was a really unique way to document some happenings by stitching them together, stitching all these different houses together, and building a book from that.
And when you're writing, Chelene, how do you write? Laptop, typewriter, pen and paper, notebooks? So what's your process? Because everybody's different.
Yeah, everyone's different, and I'm the kind of person who reevaluates my writing process often. And so what I currently do is I do a lot of writing in my head. I'm outside, I'm walking around, I'm observing, paying attention, and I take that and I often dump it all into a notebook, and it's just a whole bunch of mess. I don't know what to do with it usually. So I'll go through and I'll start to highlight, words or lines or paragraphs, and I'll take that and I'll add that to a document, and that's either where a story will evolve, or maybe an essay, or even a poem. And so I think my writing process begins in my head, and it begins in a very messy way. But I often see the shape or the structure of a project before I know what it's even about. Like, I can picture what's going to hold everything together. And that usually starts as becomes the catalyst for the story.
Do you have like a basic writing schedule you follow, or is it catch as catch can?
I definitely have a schedule now because I'm so busy and doing so many things. I don't want to have that excuse that I don't have time to write. So I use my weekends for writing, and my Monday to Friday is quite busy with meetings and business stuff and agent work. So my weekends are protected, and those are my writing periods. But I do a lot of, again, walking around and reframing for myself what counts as writing. I think is really important for writers today who, can't sit down 8 hours a day and just write. I think that's a dream world. And so we have to create the space for ourselves to be able to, sustain this creative practice.
And Chelene is the founder of her own literary studio, Breathing Space Creative. So what is a literary studio, please?
Yes. Breathing Space Creative is essentially a hub for mostly writers, but creatives in general, where we can come together, and I do work on the editorial side with writers, or I do work in terms of helping people come up with an idea for writing. But the core of what Breathing Space Creative Literary Studio does is it helps you build your own solid writing practice in a healthy and sustainable way, because we're living in times where time is now the most valuable commodity. And so we talk about how to protect time and how to build our own unique writing processes that fit our lives.
And how about the Forever Writers Club? Is that people who meet in person, or is it sort of a online kind of thing?
Yeah, it's an online membership, and it's under the Breathing Space Creative umbrella. It's a club where we do have some virtual events where we kind of talk about each other's writing, do some workshopping. Inside the club, there's a craft course that I've built. There's all kinds of fun stuff in there, and it's just, to help you stay connected to your writing practice and to kind of branch out of that solitary writing world and connect with other people who also value mindset and wellness and taking care of the writerly self.
And actually, what started all this was Junie, the book by Chelene Knight. It's from Book Hug Press. But the character I was fascinated by was Estelle. What's her story, and how did she get into the story? Did she just pop into your head one day and you said, oh, I've got to put this person into the book somewhere?
Yeah, Estelle's an interesting character, and I think she's been in my mind for quite some time. And, she's Junie's, kind of eccentric best friend, someone who values how she appears. She tries to come across as this perfect being, but through the friendship with Junie, she actually begins to realize that there's so much more to living than just trying to present herself in this way. So we kind of see her unravel a little bit. We go deeper into who she is as a human being, and we see another complex mother-daughter relationship evolve. Estelle's mother, Faye, is a busy entrepreneur who doesn't really have time for her daughter. And so that relationship starts to unfold a little bit more alongside Junie and Maddie's relationship. So she's a great character, kind of a quiet in the background character, but she comes out at really important times and says what needs to be said.
And the book, Junie, what again do you hope it will accomplish? What do you want readers to take away from it?
Yeah, I think, Junie is a book that I hope shows people how to dream. I want people to, feel compelled to build their own language for love. I feel like Junie is a second chance at living. But there's some really important themes in the book that I hope folks pick up on. There's black joy. Junie comes into herself and decides for herself who she is, who she's going to be, and seeks, to define joy and happiness for herself. There's also the black female introversion theme that I have woven throughout the whole book. So Junie breaks that stereotype that black women have to be loud, angry, strong, sassy. Junie isn't like her mother at all. She uses her introversion as a superpower. She observes the world in really unique ways, and essentially she predicts the demise of her neighborhood, and that destruction kind of mirrors her mother's downward spiral. And, I hope folks pick up on the complicated relationships in the book as well, that, there's no happy ending for Junie and her mother's relationship, and love can be shown when there is no language for it. That's a really important part of the book that I hope folks pick up on.
And before we let you go, tips for up-and-coming writers. I always ask people this, and they always seem to have different ideas. So what kind of 2 or 3 of the main tips you always seem to pass along to neophytes?
Yes. The biggest tip I have is build your own list of what counts as writing, especially when things get busy and you're not actually sitting down and drafting. Think about that unstructured play phase when you are brainstorming and walking and paying attention to the world, because how do we document the world if we don't have a language for how we see it? So paying attention to, what counts as writing for you, that's number 1 tip. Number 2 would be embrace the mess of the first draft. Because the real writing doesn't happen until revision happens. And so let it be messy, let it be horrible, let it be terrible, and just know that it has nowhere to go but up. And my third tip would be, I think my third tip would be very careful about who you share your first drafts with. Because the feedback that you get will likely not be helpful if you pick the wrong people. So I don't share my first drafts with family. I will share with them the published work, but those who don't understand the evolution of the writing process will just not be helpful. And that's my honest answer.
Yeah, well, it's very daunting when you create something, whether it's a song, a poem, a painting, a book, a short story, and you present it to somebody, and then you're always nervous and you're kind of doubtful of your own talents anyway, and then somebody looks and go, oh, this is a piece of crap. Well, then the big balloon goes down, 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 and you put the pen away for another 20 years. So one more question. Chelene Knight, author of Junie and other works. Actually, why do you write? What's your driving force?
Why do I write? I love this. I love the idea of taking the time I need to get my thoughts out. And again, I'm also an introverted person, just like Junie. And so, if I'm in conversation with someone, sometimes it doesn't come out in the way I'd hoped it would come out. And so having that page in front of me is an opportunity for a second chance. So I write to live lives that I don't currently live, and I write to build characters and worlds that I would love to one day see for myself.
That sounds wonderful, and thank you very much for being with us. This was Chelene Knight. The book is Junie. Look for it, and if you want to know more about Hogans Alley in Vancouver, go visit the area, walk around. Even though it's covered by the Georgia Viaduct now, I'm sure you can locate other areas that would tie into what the book is all about. So, Chelene Knight, thank you very much, and best of luck.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.